It's a new league year. I mean, there's some new players on some new teams. It's Wednesday, March 12th. We're going to talk about it all here on No Buts About It. Oh, that one was so much worse. The first one was so good, but I forgot to hit record. So
yeah, that one did not hit good. It just, I mean, there's a video that it reminds me of. You wouldn't understand the reference, but there's some people that maybe listen to the show that will understand the reference. But it reminds me of Roman Reigns declaring for the Royal Rumble like years and years ago. He was like, "I would like to declare to the Royal Rumble," and then he like raises his eyebrow. It was just really funny. I mean, I'm not saying like you stuttered and stuff. It gave that kind of energy off.
Yeah, that one was rough. Yeah, so that was that intro that you just heard was my second time saying that because I did it once and it was perfect. No one will ever see it except for Chus, but it was amazing. Mm-hmm. And I forgot to hit record, so
it was very good. It was very good. Unfortunately, it's lost media now for all my lost media fanatics out there.
Long lost, never recorded, just out into the world. There's been some moves made here though in the NFL by teams not named the Cincinnati Bengals. You may argue that the Pittsburgh Steelers haven't made too many moves, but like the Cincinnati Bengals have just been stagnant. And we're gonna talk about that a little bit here. But like, so like there's a long list of players here that were signed in free agency on NFLnetwork.com to the Bengals, but there's no like new names, right? So that's what fans are looking for is like, how are we going to build upon what we had last year? And on top of that, how are we going to have not only a better defense than what we had last year, but the defense last year is not the standard. We do not want to be better than that defense. We want to be better than the defense 2 years ago or 3 years ago, you know? So last year should not be the standard. So I'm just going to go through real quick and list off the signings that the Bengals have made this offseason so far. I do have X open in case something big does happen while we're recording here. But so running back Samaje Perine signed a 2-year deal worth up to $3.8 million with the Bengals. Glad to have him back. Okay. Kind of random. I kind of feel like Duke Tobin like woke up, made that deal, and then was like, okay, that'll keep the fans happy, and went back to bed.
And I was gonna say nothing against Perine, but I mean it's not like a blockbuster signing in my opinion to have him extended. I mean he's a great player and he adds depth to your running back lineup, but still it's just
maybe he's better than Herbert at pass blocking, which Khalil Herbert went to the Colts today too. So I mean that we traded for Herbert, let Herbert walk in the offseason. That's a fine deal. I'm not mad at it. I still think we need to draft a pass blocking running back, Cam Scattaboo. But you know, we'll see. T. Higgins, he got franchise tagged. You know, that extension talk is still ongoing. Mike Gesicki, he re-signed a 3-year, $25.5 million deal with $12 million in year one. And I like this contract, but also something that like Joe Goodberry and James Rapine and some bigger Bengals media heads have been talking about is how like the Bengals front load contracts, and like for a lot of teams, it's like, okay, yeah, they're trying to balance this out, but the Bengals tend to do it to make it look like they're using up the cap space. And so I wonder if that's what they're doing here. But you know, Mike Gesicki, he's real excited to be back. I like him. I think he's a good player. I'm glad he's back. Joe Burrow wanted him back. I'm good with it. Tanner Hudson, again, okay. 1-year contract. Cody Ford. I'm glad he's back. A good depth piece, kind of played all over the line last year with injuries. Not a starter by any means, but he signed a 2-year contract. Edge Joseph Asai returned on a 1-year deal worth $7 million. I'm interested to see what he has because he's kind of one of those guys who Lou never really played. He sat behind Sam Hubbard. BJ Hill re-signed. Glad to have him back. 3-year, $33 million. Then this is kind of where we get into some of the newer names. The two new names to Cincinnati Bengals fans are defensive lineman TJ Slayton, who was with the Green Bay Packers, agreed to a 2-year, $15.1 million deal. And then linebacker Oren Burks, who is with the Eagles. I've talked to some Eagles fans. They're really excited about the move. They said Bengals fans should be excited about the move, I should say. But he's not like a starting caliber linebacker that necessarily, and his contract reflects that. It's 2-year, $5 million. And then after that, we get back to the guys who are returning. Cornerback Marco Wilson, 1-year deal. I'm pretty sure we got him off waivers from the Cardinals last year. And then we extended the long snapper, Cal Adamitis, who's been there forever. And so, like, nothing really sticks out there to me as like, wow, this is what the Bengals are doing. They're going all in. They recognize that they have Joe Burrow as their quarterback. They saw the season Joe Burrow had last season, and they are like, we can win now. This doesn't feel like a team that's going all into me. This feels like a team that doesn't know how to build a team. And they are falling into the stereotypes that people have talked about the Bengals for years, about them being cheap, about them being a poverty franchise. They're not going after these guys. It's been made clear to them. If they would literally sit down and watch Bengals YouTubers, very smart Bengals YouTubers, who have told them how to build the team realistically and overpaying some of these players to just, be like making sure you can actually get them in the building, you can build a team here. Like Will Fries, he didn't get signed. He's in Minnesota now. Kevin Zeitler, he's not coming back to the Bengals. He was at the Lions, free agent. I forget where. Oh, he's signing with the Titans. We've let all these guards walk. There's been a ton of good defensive linemen, defensive tackles that could have come in. Who knows if the Bengals even talked to them? Haven't heard any real rumors about any of that. In this stuff, it's getting shallow. And Duke Tobin just appears to be doing nothing other than signing these bargain players, which, that's been what the Bengals have been said to do. That's been the stereotype. They don't spend money. And in the past, that hasn't been true. In the past, the Bengals have spent a ton of money. The Bengals spent a ton of money on defense. It didn't work out, but they spent a ton of money. This year, they're not spending any money. And it's frustrating for fans. Fans are getting upset because they are watching. They've been through this before with Carson Palmer. They didn't sign to keep certain guys. We watched Carson Palmer leave. You watched Andrew Whitworth leave. You're potentially about to watch Trey Hendrickson leave. Maybe T. Higgins. Jesse Bates. This is just a recurring thing. And it's because the front office waited.
Yeah.
If the front office would have paid Jamar Chase last season, it would have been a lot cheaper. If the front office would have paid Jamar Chase 2 weeks ago, it would have been about $10 million cheaper. But Duke Tobin, and this is negotiation 101. You never negotiate in public. But Duke Tobin at the combine said, by the end of it all, Jamar Chase will be the highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL. At the combine, that would have been about $30 million, I believe. Now Myles Garrett signed a $40 million extension.
Yep.
And you know what Jamar Chase's...
he's eyeing up a $50 million a year contract right now.
His camp should have that on recording, and they should be playing that at every single negotiation meeting. And there should be Duke cannot say, in my mind, he cannot say, well, that was back then. Why didn't you sign him back then when he was asking for the structure? The price goes up. The longer you wait for all these guys, the price went up with Jesse Bates when you waited. The price went up with Trey Hendrickson when you waited. It's bad. It's bad business. And I feel like Duke Tobin. So back in, I want to say 2020, the 2020 offseason, I could be wrong. Maybe it was 2021. The Bengals had Carl Lawson, and he was a free agent, and people were like, we got to re-sign him. And Duke Tobin said no. They didn't re-sign him. And he went and got Trey Hendrickson on a deal in free agency, and DJ Reader on a deal in free agency. DJ Reader was a bit more, but Trey Hendrickson was a deal. And obviously, DJ Reader played out well. Trey Hendrickson played out well. And I think Duke Tobin is still trying to chase that high of getting that deal. He thinks he's smarter than what he is. Trey Hendrickson, is probably the greatest free agency signing in the history of the Cincinnati Bengals. I think that's a fair argument to make. But just because you make that signing doesn't mean you get to say, okay, I'm going to go find the next one. Sign good football players. Draft good football players. It really comes down to that. It's not that, don't overcomplicate things. It's like Jonathan Allen is out there. We need a pass rush. Jonathan Allen can provide that. Let's go get a pass rush. It's not too difficult. I was curious. I was looking at what was the Bengals. How did the Bengals sacks look last season on defense total? So they had 36 total sacks as a defense last season. 17 and a half of those were Trey Hendrickson. So almost half. 18 is half. He had 17 and a half. Joseph Asai had 5. Joseph Asai is back. So right now we have 22 and a half of those sacks rostered. BJ Hill is back. He had 3. Okay. So we have 25.5 sacks rostered of our 36. Chris Jenkins Jr. had 3. Okay. 28 and a half are on the roster. Do we know if Chris Jenkins Jr. is going to take a step in year 2? No, we don't. Sam Hubbard retired. He had 2. McKinley Jackson had 1. Another second-year player. Does he take a step? I don't know. Cedric Johnson had 1. Sheldon Rankins had 1. Isn't on the team. Dax Hill had 1, but he's a cornerback, so can you rely on him to keep getting sacks? Zach Carter had half a sack. He isn't on the team anymore. Cam Taylor-Britt's another cornerback who had half a sack. And Jay Tufele is, I believe, a free agent as well. Likely not going to be re-signed, and he's off the team. So, really, the Bengals have no pass rush here. They have Joseph Asai, brought him back. BJ Hill. Miles Murphy doesn't have any sacks. He didn't really get to play last year, but what are we relying on here? And TJ Slayton, I've looked at him. He's a run defender. Chris Jenkins, run defender. McKinley Jackson, run defender. There's guys with potential here, but that's what we're working with. If Trey Hendrickson leaves, you have 1, 4, 4, 7. You have 12 sacks on the roster of 36. Right. If Trey Hendrickson leaves, you have no pass rush. Maybe Joseph Asai. Maybe Chris Jenkins if he takes another step. What are you doing? You have now made it in. There's 2 positions the Bengals really need. Guard and defensive interior pass rusher. If you let Trey Hendrickson go, you need an edge then too. And you can't get all those in the first round. You're not going to get all those in the first round. You have pretty much made every single Bengals mock draft I have seen this week has had Kenneth Grant from Michigan being the guy, because that is really the only guy who you can go with. And you can say he's going to be a pass rusher who's going to be effective day 1. But this defense, as it stands right now, is worse than what it was last year. And it was abysmal last year. I do not know what Duke took. This is the most excited I've been to watch the Cincinnati Bengals in the Joe Burrow era. Normally I'm a guy who's like, oh yeah, the Bengals, we're going to go out there, we're going to kill everyone, even on weeks where it's not likely. I'm like, we got this. I don't feel that way right now. I do not feel that way at all. And I don't blame the players who are kind of just, what are we doing? Because I don't know what we're doing.
And that's the thing. That's the concerning part. I mean, in Cincinnati, I think that's kind of the issue that you have been talking about. And it's really unfortunate because, as you mentioned, there are so many talented individuals that have these solutions that are not professionals. And somehow they have built rosters. I'm sure probably even people that play Madden have built better rosters than Tobin is doing. And that's really unfortunate because the Bengals just a couple of years ago were in the Super Bowl and you guys had high hopes just a couple of years ago. Right after that Super Bowl, you lost only by 3 to this Kansas City Chiefs. And since then, it's just been kind of snowballing. Obviously, Burrow was hurt 2 years ago, but last year should have been that wake-up call. And instead, it just kind of showed how poor the defense really was. And it shows how great your offense is. Your offense is so explosive, so high-powered that, honestly, it could give a really good team a run for their money. But the problem is your defense can't hold up. And that's the issue because you guys, if with that offense, if you guys just had a little bit better of a defense, I feel like you guys against the Philadelphia Eagles would have been a much better Super Bowl than what we witnessed this year.
Even if you look at a lot of these teams, they may not have players that are necessarily producing sacks, but they're producing quarterback pressures. And the Bengals didn't even have that. So even to just have a quarterback pressure would be, that would be an upgrade. And it's like a lot of the guys we're looking at that we wanted the Bengals to go after, they're not signing these huge contracts that it's like, okay, yeah, I'm glad the Bengals didn't sign them. No, they're signing very reasonable contracts that I would have paid. Deo Odeingbo, I forget where he went. Left the Colts. I'm trying to find him here. Find his contract. He's a guy who he's not going to be like some insane sack monster, but he is going to produce quarterback pressures, and that affects the game. Yeah, I forget what his contract was, but I remember just looking at it. And, he got signed by the Bears. 3-year, $48 million with $32 million fully guaranteed. I would have paid that for him. Maybe some people argue it's a bit of an overpay. I would have paid that. Maybe the guarantee is a little high, which I could see that being why the Bengals wouldn't have, because they don't do that. Or defensive lineman Leve Onwuzurike. He re-signed back with the Lions, 1 year, $5.5 million, coming off injury. Like, you could have done that. Roy Lopez, another guy who signed with the Lions. Like, there are guys out there. He signed for 1 year, $4.65 million. Just like, if you're going to take a swing on someone who looks promising. Don't take a swing on someone who Bengals fans all are collectively going like, who's that? Like, and all NFL fans go, who's that? What are you doing? And like, you talk about the offense being good. It's great with the offense being. I love that the offense is good. But at what point does Joe request a trade? Because Joe has been out there and he's been saying this is how you re-sign Jamar, T, and Trey, and Mike Gesicki, and you have money left over for free agency. He's already gone on podcasts and said that too.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, and that's the concerning part too, is because you guys have that franchise guy. You have the weapons around him. You have even one defensive piece. You just need to add defensive players. And honestly, this kind of reminds me in some aspects of the way the Steelers were back in the 2010s with the Killer Bees. You had Brown and Bell. You had a really high-powered offense, a great offensive line. I mean, I know your offensive line isn't in the same boat, but hear me out here. It was a very similar situation, and you didn't have the defense, and a contract couldn't get done, and Le'Veon Bell sat out. And then Antonio Brown, a year or two later, got mad. He left, and it just turned into a whole different team. And now it's a very defensive-oriented team with a lackluster offense that's slowly building itself back. But when it comes to the Cincinnati Bengals itself, I think it is a note of concern just because when it comes to Joe Burrow, you guys haven't really had that guy in a very long time. I don't know if ever. I don't know. I mean, obviously, there was Carson Palmer for that brief stint that was decent, but he left. Then you had Andy Dalton, who was Andy Dalton. I don't know where you would put him on the spectrum. of like good and bad quarterbacks, but he was
He
there.
is the average line.
He is the standard of average quarterbacks. He is average. So, and you open up a dictionary and he comes up as average quarterback. But nonetheless, here nor there, Andy Dalton was your other franchise guy. Now you have a guy like Joe Burrow, who is a legendary quarterback. Any team would love to have him that really needs a quarterback. And there's plenty and that would love to have Joe Burrow on their squad. And he knows that. And it's unfortunate because right now it's not worth a concern because you still got the guys, you still got Chase and stuff, but there is going to be a time where it is of concern. And it could be as soon as next year. Unfortunately.
Yeah. We've spent 20 minutes on the Bengals, much of it just be me just ranting. But there are other teams in the NFL. Let's head on over to Pittsburgh. Let's cross the river. You guys have made some moves. I think you guys have made less moves, but you brought in more playmakers, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so we let go a lot of guys in free agency. Dan Moore, we released Larry Ogunjobi. We've done different things. We've kind of had a lot of unrestricted free agents this free agency. We lost both. Well, you can't say both because we haven't lost the one yet, but we did lose Justin Fields. He is going to be a Jet. A lot of people, including myself, were really upset by that because, in my opinion, I felt that Justin Fields, although wasn't the greatest player ever, I figured he had already played with the Steelers for a year. You might as well sign him to either another year or a 2-year extension. What could it do that's poor? Because right now we're in the exact situation that I was afraid of, and that is that we don't have a quarterback because now we don't really have anybody that you can really rely on the idea that there is going to be somebody throwing to the newly brought in DK Metcalf, and your other side of the field is George Pickens, and it's great. And the problem is there's some holes, but it's not they're fixable holes, but they're still concerning holes. Like I said, we let go of a lot of guys. We let a lot go to unrestricted free agency. We made a qualifying offer to Jaylen Warren, which is pretty big considering Najee went on to the Chargers, which I kind of figured Najee wasn't going to stick around just because although Najee's good, number one, the Steelers don't like to keep running backs too long unless they're Jerome Bettis or something like that. And he is very much not a bad player. Always showed up to work and always did well when he could, but he just feel like he was missing a little bit of that spark. So I'm not surprised that he moved on. And I think he'll have a little bit of new light in LA, and I'm hopeful for him. When it comes to the Steelers free agency moves, well, the big one that I made a whole 10-minute video about was DK Metcalf. Like I said, very big on that move, but the problem that I have with it in the whole video in a nutshell was, and I encourage you to go back and watch it because I go into it in a little bit more in depth, but the idea that we don't have somebody to throw to him. And although DK Metcalf is really good, me and my friends made the joke today that we were also going to sign Cooper Kupp. It's not true. I doubt it's true, but we would have all of these wide receivers, which was the biggest issue for the last couple of years with the Steelers, and now we don't have somebody to throw. And although the guys we had a couple of years ago, post Ben, like Kenny Pickett, Mitchell Trubisky, etc., although Kenny Pickett isn't starting caliber quarterback, I feel like maybe even with better wide receivers, he probably would have been at least somewhat better than he was, but we're never going to know. And like I said, somebody's going to rip my head off and talk about the Eagles and stuff like that, and Kenny Pickett and whatnot. But I'm just saying, I don't think it was, I think it would have been more of a left to be seen. And then, moving on from Kenny at that point. But yes, as you mentioned, DK Metcalf was a big one. Darius Slay was another big one. Cornerback from the Eagles, who is best known for causing a fight with Darnell Washington when it comes to Steelers knowledge and being a very aggressive, physical cornerback, which is something good, though. And I'm hoping that the passion that he had with the Eagles and the intensity that he had with the team last season doesn't dwindle into this season. We've signed a lot of cornerbacks in the past in the last couple of years that really haven't panned out all that well, such as Patrick Peterson, who have had former all-star careers and really haven't done a whole lot. So I'm kind of hopeful, and that's why I'm glad that this is only a 1-year deal. So if Darius Slay for some reason doesn't play well, we can just kind of let him go. But I'm hopeful that that doesn't happen because we definitely need some help in the secondary. Obviously, we had DK Metcalf. I'm just looking at the list here. Kenneth Gainwell, also another signing, is pretty good considering, as mentioned, Najee Harris not going to be starting anymore. It's probably going to be Jalen Warren as well as Gainwell. So that'll be kind of beneficial. And Gainwell's only signed for a year, and it'll give us some time to look into drafting a new running back or making that push for another big running back somewhere in free agency or the trade deadline or whatnot, because it's kind of a place in which it's kind of lacking right now. Jalen Warren, I don't feel, is on a level of intensity when it comes to running backs like Austin Eckler. And the reason I bring up that position is because when the Chargers went and didn't bring back Melvin Gordon years ago, Austin Eckler was the was the predecessor, and he ended up panning out, I feel like, a lot better for the Chargers than Melvin Gordon did in some aspects. So fortunately, Jalen Warren's not like that. He has the potential to be, but he's just not there yet. And I think this will be beneficial, especially depending on if we draft running back or what we decide to do. And lastly, the last move we made was linebacker Malik Harrison from the Ravens, which I don't know too much about him, but obviously, I mean, we love to beef up our defense, and I'm hoping that he shows a little bit more intensity, because when we got Patrick Queen, I was very hopeful for him, but he really didn't show me a whole lot this past season. So I'm hopeful that by getting another player from Baltimore and from their defense, that he actually kind of shows some promise there. But the big thing that I'm waiting on with the Steelers, all other positions aside, is the quarterback. I mean, that's the biggest flaw here. I mean, this team isn't bad, and I mean, obviously 9-8, 10-7 seasons isn't what you want, but I really think that at the end of the day, you need that quarterback. And I think this season we're going to draft another one. In my opinion, I think we are going to draft another one. I don't think we don't have a second round pick, and I think we're going to end up going for somebody. We're going to end up reaching, in my opinion. I think we're going to end up reaching or trading up, and I think we're going to end up drafting a quarterback that's not going to start this year. And I think that one of the big rumors right now is not Russell Wilson. Actually, it's not really that big of a rumor, I don't think, but it might be something that I've heard and whatnot. But they did reach back out to Mason Rudolph about bringing him back. And the pairing that people were talking about doing is having rookie quarterback, whoever it wants to be. Obviously, it's probably not going to be somebody in the first couple of, selections, but, we'll throw, I don't know where you would put a lot of these quarterbacks at. I mean, obviously where do you put Jackson Dart? Where do you put Quinn Ewers? Where do you put those guys? Are they further down than, I'm blanking on his name right now, from Miami? Is he better than
Cam Ward?
Yeah, Cam Ward.
I think Dart and Ewers definitely are. Ewers, I think, will probably go in the third round. Dart will probably go in the second.
Right. So my thing is that I think that they'll probably reach for Dart, assuming they'll probably end up reaching for somebody like Dart, or getting a second round pick so they can draft Dart and or Ewers or wherever they fall when it comes to the draft. Then you have Mason Rudolph as quarterback 2, and then quarterback 2 or 1, I guess, and then the other one was Gardner Minshew.
Oh, okay. I hadn't heard that. I heard the Rudolph rumor.
Yeah, the Rudolph rumor is much more in depth. I feel like the Gardner Minshew one is just a kind of more of an idea. I don't think there's any rumors of them like talking or anything like that, because I think the Steelers are still kind of trying to figure out what they're doing with Rodgers and Wilson right now, because Wilson's obviously a free agent still. Fields is out of the picture right now. So you have 2 really big veteran quarterbacks. Russell Wilson already played for the Steelers last season. Russell Wilson is now going to go visit the Browns tomorrow, which is Thursday, March 13th. And then Friday, March 14th, he's going to be in New York, I believe, is the lineup.
The Giants. Yep.
Yeah. And so from there, we'll figure out if he decides to go with either or go with the Steelers. And then Aaron Rodgers is kind of just like waiting on his own time. But if the Steelers decide not to wait on Aaron Rodgers and him meditating and figuring out what he wants to do, there is that option that people mentioned that could be an idea. Like I said, I don't think there's really any reports about it yet, because I don't think it's anything too big, but I think Mason Rudolph coming back is probably likely. And I think the idea of having Gardner Minshew or somebody like Gardner Minshew on the team that's better than Mitchell Trubisky. But you have, and my way of going about it is you don't let that drafted quarterback start. You don't throw him into the fire when crap's hitting the fan. If you have Gardner Minshew and he's not doing good, put in Mason Rudolph or vice versa, and do not throw in that rookie quarterback. You let him sit. And I know that sounds bad, but you just let him sit, because I feel like partially that's what happened with Kenny. And I just don't risk injury, don't risk anything. Just stick to the script. And if we tank, so be it. Get a better, get a better defensive end, get an lineman. I don't care. Just hold. But that's kind of what I've been hearing. Danny Dimes obviously was an idea, but he has gone to the Colts. And Sam Darnold also signed, and Zach Wilson has also signed. Not that we would get him. There's some quarterbacks left in free agency, such as Marcus Mariota.
Nope, back with the Commanders.
Oh, never mind. Marcus Mariota is now
He's
gone.
off the board. I'm ripping him off right now.
Yeah, Marcus Mariota is now gone. Jameis Winston, is he still up there? Is he gone
I believe Jameis Winston is still available. Is he under contract still with the Browns?
I don't know. I don't think so, because they're trying to bring in Russ, because they have Kenny Pickett and Deshaun Watson.
Dude, I don't know what the Browns are doing at any given time. They're these Ohio NFL teams, man.
I don't think Jameis Winston's signed. I thought.
Oh, this is a void year. So he's an unrestricted free agent in 2025. So that's why. Yeah, okay, so you're probably good with him then. He's probably on the board.
So some of those guys are available still. I mean, it's slim pickings out here nonetheless. I mean, the quarterback situation is really not that high. I mean, even just a couple of days ago, the Steelers were linked to Kyler Murray. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, would the Cardinals move Kyler Murray if the deal was right? Maybe, but would Kyler Murray do well in Pittsburgh? I don't know. I mean, it's very interesting. I'm not upset by the moves. I'm just really worried about the quarterback situation.
This has nothing to do with really anything other than he did play for the Steelers for a little bit. Just saw Mike Williams is going back to LA Chargers. So he's going to reunite with Justin Herbert. But
which is so stupid that they even whatever.
So that happened. But something I've seen a lot of, and this isn't me trying to take a shot at the Steelers, I do think there is a level of legitimacy to this concern. Darius Slay, DK Metcalf, George Pickens, Joey Porter Jr.'s got a little bit of it in him. Let's call them big personalities. Is there any concern there with that? I mean, the talk's been around DK Metcalf and George Pickens, fighting for targets, maybe getting a little upset with Arthur Smith at times based on the way he likes to call some of these games. But I think Joey Porter Jr. and Darius Slay should become a part of that conversation as well now.
When it comes to them, the problem is with players such as George Pickens. The thing that I want to bring up about him is he complains because partially he's not, getting the targets, but also he's not, he'll get the targets, but he won't catch them, if that makes sense. Okay. And the reason that he's not catching them isn't necessarily his fault, but a lot of times it's because he's overthrown, underthrown. He's not getting the ball. The play calling's poor. Yes. I think he's getting frustrated. He has big personality. He does cause issues, but I think a lot of that has to do with frustration in him not getting enough catches. So, I mean, there was a game, I think it might've been against the Chiefs, where he had like over almost double-digit targets, but he only caught like 3 passes. And it was just lockdown defense in a way, but also like there's no opening for him when he's double covered. I think in an aspect, if they double cover somebody like DK Metcalf, it'll leave Pickens a little bit more open, which will make him happier, or vice versa. So there's really no way that you're going to fix both unless you rotate them. So like if you have DK Metcalf running fades and then you have George Pickens on slots, then switch them so they have more of a balance. And I think Arthur Smith would just have to play around with it. I think you also kind of, and I'm just going to be straight up about this, Josh, and you need a quarterback with balls. Like
Okay.
you need a quarterback with balls, because the problem is like, nothing against Russell Wilson, but like I'm hearing things that like like I don't know how true this is, but I think a lot of times they didn't want Russell Wilson to improvise, and Arthur Smith was just like, stick to the script, and it caused a lot of the failures. And you need somebody like Ben Roethlisberger that has balls, that when somebody like Todd Haley's like, run this play, and then Ben looks at the field and goes, okay, yeah, we're not going to run that, and then changes the play on the fly. And then even though Todd Haley's like, that was bad, he was like, they got us a first down. You need a quarterback that's going to be like, screw you if it doesn't work. And no, we haven't had that. We haven't had that since Ben, because obviously we're still trying to find that guy. And you need somebody that's going to do that. I don't know if we will until somebody like Mike Tomlin does inevitably move on, because, just because of Mike Tomlin being such a renowned coach. But like, I think it's needed, because you need somebody that's going to be like, oh, that's a good idea. Yeah, you know what? I'm going to adjust this play, and then improvises and then changes it, and then doesn't care about the repercussions, because he knows that you're not going to bench him.
So like Aaron Rodgers?
No. Well, I mean, Aaron Rodgers in some aspects could be that type of guy, but I think he's like 5 years too late. I think he's a little old.
What if you guys got Aaron Rodgers, but you didn't give him the keys? You gave him like the ability to like read the play. Like if it's a run up the middle and you see the boxes stacked, don't send Gainwell or whoever it is up the middle into the arms of a linebacker. But he can change that. But you're not bringing in you're not trading for Devontae Adams again. You're not bringing in players just because Rodgers wants them. You're making him take accountability.
I'm not against it. Like at that point, I mean, obviously, I think if he came to Pittsburgh, he's not going to have that much pull. I mean, Aaron Rodgers going to the Jets, he had a little bit more pull because he could probably get away with a little bit more. I feel like if the Steelers stack their quarterback room, because in all fairness, the Jets quarterback room really wasn't that good. If you put somebody like, if you have a situation where it's like Rodgers, Mason Rudolph, and a rookie, I think he'll realize like he can be benched. But the problem is Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers are really not in they're kind of at odds right now, because he wants a lot of money. He wants a lot of money and a lot of guaranteed money that the Steelers are just not going to give him. If somehow it works, the Steelers will probably only sign him for a year or two. I'm hoping just a year. You put him in the front, and then even if he gets like, however much guaranteed, if he starts stinking and he's like, oh, well, I need my boy Devontae Adams back, Mike Tomlin can be like, tough crap, man. Mason Rudolph is going to start because he actually knows the playbook. And then bye-bye Aaron Rodgers, you're going to ride the bench. So honestly, I think it would be fine. But like I said, the only problem I have though with that too is, in fairness, I mean, Russell Wilson wasn't the worst. I know people don't like him. I don't think he was that bad. But in fairness, if you want to go down that route, they benched Justin Fields for Russell Wilson. We still finished 10-7. And Russ probably at some point probably could have been benched for Fields at a point towards the end of the season. When we started going on that losing spell, probably could have thrown in Fields for new light just to see what happens. And I wonder what it would have looked like against the Bengals. I really do. Like in the last game of the season, because that could have changed everything for us.
Yeah, that would have changed Lou's plan, I think, because obviously Fields is more mobile than
right. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see, but I think the big question with our free agency is quarterback. I mean, everything else I feel like can be tweaked and adjusted. Running back, you could probably throw anybody back there, and you could probably try to make it work. You obviously need a decent running back, but you could probably work with Jaylen Warren and Gainwell, and then maybe get a rookie in there or somebody off the streets. Your line isn't bad. You got rid of the pieces that were causing problems, and you have Fayetanu. You've got Broderick Jones probably going to be able to play his position now. You've got guys that are probably going to be good. You got these rookies that really stepped up last year that are going to be in the position to start. And then you got the defense that is getting older. It is starting to reach its peak towards the downhill slope here. So, I mean, it's kind of like boom or bust here. Minka's getting old. TJ Watt's getting old. Cam Hayward is literally on his last thread. I mean, these guys are old. I mean, so the defense is going to dwindle away eventually. So like you're running out of time. But I mean, they're still adding pieces. The defense is not something I'm really that concerned about. It's just the defensive play calling. So they got to just figure that out, because if they don't figure that out, we're going to be in for another 10-7 season. But that's if we get a quarterback. If we're running with Bailey Zappi and Skylar Thompson, it's not going to be looking too hot. It's not going to be looking too hot. I'm just saying. And we're looking at maybe 3 wins at best, and the hope for like whoever is the quarterback coming out next year.
I love Bailey Zappi. He's not catching.
I do, but Bailey Zappi. Yeah, my dad, shout out Tom. While free agency was going on, Steelers were like, "Oh yeah, Steelers are interested in Aaron Rodgers," and he was like, "Actually, I just read that the Steelers have signed Bailey Zappi and named him the starter," and I was like, "What?" And he was like, "Oh, I'm just kidding." And
it's Zappi hour.
I was actually like so mad. I have nothing against Zappi. I think he has the potential, but investing in somebody like him is crazy.
People way back when I started this, if they've been around long enough, they remember when Bailey Zappi was a rookie. And every time I said Zappi's name, I had like a little a lightning shock sound that I'd play. But
yeah, I remember that. I remember when you first started the show, and I would listen to it, and you would every time you said Zappi.
Let's talk about like the broader NFL now. What team do you think has done the best in rebuilding, retooling, bringing guys in to help their team?
Well, obviously I know you have very high perspective on the Patriots. I saw you post about the Patriots, which I don't disagree with. I think the Patriots made a lot of good moves. I think we should probably highlight them. And I also really like that Washington is just continuing to get better as well. And I think that shows because they're making a lot of trades and a lot of moves and stuff. They just picked up CJ as well. They made a lot of re-signings. And although they've been kind of low-key under the radar in some aspects, like I said, the re-signings are huge, the trades are big, and they have a very similar roster that they did to last year. So I think they should be kind of like on people's radar. But I know you want to talk about the Patriots, and I don't disagree with that, because I think for example, Spillane, he's a great defensive player, and him being able to go to the Patriots is going to be big for their defense. So just to start.
Yeah. So the Patriots, let's talk about them first. Looking at some of the highlight players I want to highlight. So first of all, Mac Hollins, wide receiver, kind of an odd. If you're not following Mac Hollins on Instagram, go ahead and do that. He posts some great content. It's not even all football related. He's just fun follow. Not going to be a game changer in any way, but he's a great locker room guy. And I think that's what the New England offense really needs right now. They brought in edge Harold Landry on a 3-year, $43.5 million deal. I think that's a pretty good signing. A lot of their moves are going to be defensive. You already talked about Robert Spillane. My favorite signing that they did was actually one that they originally weren't going to get, and then they upped the ante, and he flipped on the Panthers. Milton Williams, 4-year, $104 million deal. Like, that pass rush is going to be great. That's a guy I really wanted the Bengals to go after. I don't know if they did, but Milton Williams, I think he's going to be a game wrecker there for New England. So that's why I really like him. They also got Carlton Davis there from the Lions on a 3-year, $60 million deal. So a lot of defensive moves being made in New England. I would like to see them make some offensive moves as well, though, because they really don't have any weapons for Drake May right now, and I don't think you want to go into the season with Mac Hollins being your top wide receiver, but maybe they're okay.
And they could still make moves. They could even probably draft a wide receiver as well. There's some good ones in in the draft this year that are pretty decent. Or they could make a trade, or Cooper Kupp could pick up a veteran like Cooper Kupp.
Yep, that's a guy they've been going after. Cooper Kupp was released. I could see them signing him. I'm kind of surprised they haven't already.
I think they were just kind of waiting, because I think they were trying to figure out, because the Rams mentioned that they were just trying to trade him first. They were going to try to see if they couldn't get a trade out, they were going to release him on Wednesday today.
We got a blockbuster deal here for the Bengals. Duke Tobin was cooking.
Oh, you don't sound. Because I was gonna say you did not seem that excited. I was like, "There's no way it was a
A
blockbuster."
1-year deal. He was injured all last year. Okay, cool.
Mm.
I'm not mad about bringing these guys back. I just want some moves to be made. You mentioned the Commanders, so let's look at some of the stuff they've done. They've been very active on the trade block. Bringing in Deebo Samuel, for a 5th-round pick. Big one that Jaden Daniels is going to love is bringing in Laramie Tunzel. They traded for him, which some Texans fans are split on that. Texans fans are like, okay, our false start penalties are going to be cut in half now, because he does have a problem with that, but he's also a big guy.
Right.
Laramie Tunzel is a good offensive tackle. Having him brought in is going to be huge. And then they re-signed some guys. They brought in Javon Kinlaw, which is okay. Marcus Mariota came back. Nothing really in terms of like new guys. Just signing in free agency that wowed me with the Commanders, but the trades I think are going to be the big deal for them.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's going to show. I mean, like I said, I don't know. I think Washington is going to be a very, very good team. I mean, they were great last year, but in respects to the other teams that are also in their division, I think that they could make a run for that division. I think Philly's still going to be a good team, but they lost a lot of big key players on that defense and whatnot. So I think that going into next season, I think Washington kind of knows that, because I think with Washington going on to the NFC Championship last year, and although they got pretty badly dismantled, Philadelphia, like I've mentioned this before, I don't know if I mentioned it on the show, but Philadelphia was probably the most complete Super Bowl team I have seen very long time. Defensively, offensively, you look at like their entire playoff run. They really dominated the wild card. They had a close game with the Rams, demolished the Chargers, and then pretty much obliterated the Chiefs. I mean, that team was just so complete. But I mean, at the end of the day, they lost a lot of their defensive keys. They're still going to have a lot of their offensive weapons, but still at the end of the day, it's still not going to be the same team. And if you can get a Washington team building something over there, it can make a run. Just saying, especially with young boy Jaden Daniels over there. Found a picture of him. It's funny. I actually I was going through my my old phone storage. So I have this Google Photos thing, and if you're not familiar, it's pretty much just like a iCloud place. So I had a bunch of photos up there from like my high school years, and I went through, and there was a photo of Jaden Daniels in an Arizona State jersey from like September of 2019. It was really cool because I'm like, is that Jaden Daniels? And then me and Connor had a really good laugh about it, because Jaden Daniels was in an alternate universe. Jaden Daniels was an LA Rams legend that won at least one Super Bowl, because I was with the Seahawks with Russell Wilson, and we won 4 in a row, and he won one, and then Jaden Daniels just became so good that he didn't want to re-sign with the Rams, and so he left for the Raiders. and then it caused Connor to leave the Rams to go to the Chiefs and win like 4 or 5 Super Bowls himself. So, and the Rams ended up tanking after that. It was very unfortunate for them. It was just crazy, but yeah. So yeah, Jaden Daniels, lore runs deep. And then Jordan Battle, of course, was my star safety in the backfield. So with Minka.
Okay. I'm gonna give you my team now that I thought. I mean the Patriots. They I don't really know how to like comment on any of that, but I'm just gonna move on. I'm just gonna ignore everything you just said. The Patriots were a team I thought did really well. Another team is the Vikings, but I'm working on something with the Vikings, so I don't want to comment too much on the Vikings, but I do really like what the Vikings are doing. Bears fans, listen up though, because you guys might be my favorite team to have done some stuff here. So, you guys,
Josh wants to become a Bears fan, low key.
No, the Bears fans are just mad at me, and I'm trying to regain love. So they went out and we said, what is the Bears fans' biggest issue, or Bears as a team's biggest issue? and it was their offensive line. So they went out and they fixed it. Crazy concept, novel concept, right? They traded for Jonah Jackson, a proven offensive guard, 6th round pick. I think that's a deal. If he can stay healthy, that's going to be a steal. Joe Tooney, offensive guard. He's been an offensive guard for Tom Brady. He's been an offensive guard for Patrick Mahomes, and now he's going to be an offensive guard for Caleb Williams. 2026 4th round draft pick. Again, could be a steal right here. Then very early on, they were active on, I think it was Monday, when free agency tampering kind of started. Very active. Drew Dahlman, center, agreed to a 3-year, $42 million contract, 28 guaranteed. I think he was the top lineman available in free agency. And they just, said, we want him, and they went and got him. And then Grady Jarrett got released from the Falcons, and they said, okay, yeah, we want him too. And they had him within the hour. So they're just, they saw their issues. They saw the problems they were having. They know that they're in a window. I don't know if Keenan Allen's returning or what the answer there at wide receiver is for them. They have DJ Moore. Keenan Allen's a free agent. Maybe he comes back. Maybe he doesn't. Stephon Diggs is still out there. There's still guys. I think Amari Cooper's still out there. And then you got Roma Dunze. You have players that we can make moves with here still. But I think Chicago Bears fans should be very excited. I already talked about Deo Odeyingbo earlier in the show. I think that's a great signing. They should be very excited. I think they're in a really good place to enter into the draft here to set themselves up.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, there's a lot to be said about the Bears, and I think a lot of the things is that they have a lot of promise on their team, despite what their record showed last year. And although Caleb Williams had his moments of being up and down, I think with the team that he was around in comparison to somebody like Jaden Daniels or even Bo Nix and whatnot, a lot of those guys just needed, like, a lot of those teams just kind of needed a quarterback, and they were able to thrive midway, late way through the season. Jaden Daniels the whole year. When it comes to Caleb Williams, I think there's a lot more that's needed on the team. Roma Dunze is obviously new to the roster, and I think that now, with it being a year, I think Caleb Williams will finally come into his own, because not every rookie is going to be like last year's rookie class. I mean, every quarterback almost seemed like they popped off last year when they were a rookie. So I just think that Caleb Williams just needs a little bit more time to develop. And I think this team will be pretty solid. I do. I think the signings they're making too, I think they're being aggressive when they need to be. And I think they're also being passive when they need to be. At the end of the day, I think the Bears have been solid as well. Like I said, I think I'm still pretty big on. I feel like I might be a little bit more big on the Patriots than I am the Bears, but
that's fair. That's fair. I think the Patriots have set themselves up very well too. I just think they need to do a few more moves on offense, and like I said, there's still guys available.
I think so. I think we're only like technically one full day in. I mean, Monday was legal. The what is it like? What's it called?
Tampering period.
Yeah, legal tampering period. So they were able to talk about contracts for 2 days, and then they were actually able to make these signings on Wednesday, today, and tomorrow being like the official continuation of free agency fully. So I think you just need to give it some time. I think there'll be some move.
Okay. So what players, like individual players, are you most excited about to see with their new team? We've got some big names out there.
I really want to see where Cooper Kupp goes. I think the reason I know that he's older, he's injury prone. I get it. But I really feel like there's a team, like I said, like the Patriots, or a team out there that may just need a wide receiver too, like the Steelers would have needed if they didn't trade for DK Metcalf. I think it could have been it could be very interesting to see where he goes and if he can elevate the team to a higher level on offense. I think I'm really excited to see where he goes, and I think he would probably be the biggest one for me right now. I mean, because the rest of them are quarterbacks that are kind of in limbo. I really want to see what the Steelers, like I said, I really want to see if the Steelers sign Gardner Minshew, or if they sign Mason Rudolph, or if they sign neither, if they sign Rodgers. I actually, speaking of Rodgers, I'd love to see where Rodgers ends up, because where Rodgers ends up, that could be really a game changer for that team. in a positive or a negative. It's going to be hit or miss. And same thing with Russ. I mean, if Russ ends up in New York or Cleveland, I mean, that would be a crazy concept too. I mean, Kenny Pickett sitting behind the guy that made him get a trade to begin with and being forced to sit behind that guy, Cleveland, it's kind of crazy. Just saying. But yeah, I think those, I mean, I don't know. Who are you looking for? Is there somebody that you were trying to agree with?
There's a bunch like the Vikings, I think, have made a ton of really good moves. The Colts have made some good moves with Charvarius Ward and Cam Bynum, fixing up that defense. I'm just trying to look for like a guy who I'm just like, yeah, you know what? That was just a great signing right there. Joey Bosa, I think, he's had some injury issues, but that could be huge for the Buffalo Bills. He doesn't necessarily need to play every snap on that defense, but could definitely still create some issues for teams that play against the Bills. And, the Bills have constantly been looking for that thing to put them over that edge. I don't know that Joey Bosa is that thing, but I think he makes a good argument for it. Not necessarily the best signing, but I think something that is interesting is Daniel Jones to the Colts.
Oh, are we talking about interesting signings, or are we talking about signings that because I was going to say, what players were you looking to see?
Well, that's what my thing is
what players are still left? What players are still left? Yeah, because that's what we were talking about. Like players that I'm interested to see what they do with their new team, like currently that are already signed. I mean, Bosa, I'm really curious to see how he does, just because he really had it seemed like an off year. But if he adds a little bit revamp, it's kind of like Saquon. Could he just revamp Buffalo and they win the Super Bowl next year? I mean, it's possible. I mean, it may not too, but it's still interesting. I'd love to see how. I also would love to see how D-Hop does, because they don't do anything with their old wide receivers.
Yeah, okay. I was originally talking about players that had been signed, but if we're talking about players that haven't been signed, Calais Campbell, where's he gonna go? Bengals, take a flyer on him.
Yeah.
There's some guys here still. Tevin Jenkins still hasn't been signed. He's had some injury issues. Mekhi Becton, Christian Fulton was signed. Justin Simmons didn't have a great year last year. Kind of surprised me. I thought he'd be great with Jesse Bates. I love that combination, but he's still out there. So there's still some big names out there. Daniel Jones. The thing about that is that's obviously going to be a quarterback competition between him and Anthony Richardson. And if you get through camp and you say Daniel Jones is our starter and he's better than Anthony Richardson, that's pretty damning, I think.
Yeah, because then I think at that point you're pretty much giving up in a way on AR.
I think you're pretty much shutting the door, because you've said, and it was his rookie year, so that's fine. But Gardner Minshew, you had him starting for a little bit over Anthony Richardson. There were some injuries there and stuff, and that happened. But then last year you benched Anthony Richardson for Joe Flacco at one point. And now you're bringing in Daniel Jones, who was cut by the New York Giants and pretty much was relegated to the Minnesota Vikings practice squad to compete with him. I mean, that shouldn't really be much of a quarterback competition theoretically.
Right. Shouldn't be, but it's going to be.
And I think
it's Indiana Jones.
I think the Colts would be getting a lot more the Colts would be getting a lot more flack if they hadn't signed Charvarius Ward and Cam Bynum.
Probably.
Those were good signings. I think if the Colts just came out and signed Daniel Jones first, they would be a lot more angry fans. And there's already a lot of angry fans in the Colts.
Well, we don't know. Daniel Jones, he, like I said, he's very much, they also might not be putting him in an entire competition. I mean, it might still be said that AR is going to start, but if AR starts being bad during the season, that they're going to put in Daniel Jones and he might be the guy, might be what they're saying. I mean, we don't I don't think it's
I
going to be.
think Chris Ballard's been fairly open about wanting a comp. I mean, it's a 1-year deal, 14 million, 13 fully guaranteed. To me, that's not backup money.
I think also in a way though, if he really wants that competition, I think the reason he's doing that is so that he can improve and bring out the best in AR, because AR is under the assumption he's going to start. But if you throw somebody else in the fire, AR during training camp might play to a more fuller potential and just like work on being better and improving and finally reach that stardom that a lot of people have for him. Like I said, I was never really high on him. I just never was. And
He's raw. He's been raw. He's always been a raw guy.
yeah, I mean, he like he was fine in the first couple of games when he first was a rookie, but that team was also really good. Not that the last year's team wasn't, but 2 years ago with the Minshew team was, I mean, one play away from making playoffs. But I think that AR didn't look that good last year. I mean, he had his moments where he was like, dang, that ball was crazy fast. That was a hard bullet pass. Like, that's great, but it would just like bounce off of him. It's like, oh, incomplete. So I think there's room. There's room. But I think that I think it's possible that he also gets benched for Danny Dimes, to be honest. So, and that's an issue. That's an issue. I think if I was the Colts, I'd be eyeing up some of the draft prospects for next year, for the quarterbacks next year, if that's the case.
And that's, again, like, sure, they may, give AR a chance. AR may be the starter coming into camp. And he probably will be the starter coming into camp. I just think if by the end of camp, Shane Steichen is like, we have to run with Daniel Jones. Like that, he's the better quarterback. He gives us the best chance to win. You are saying something without saying something about the future of AR. And that offense should have been a lot better than it was last year.
Right.
We were very excited about that offense last year, and they lost a lot of offensive linemen this year too.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them to injury and then to free agency, but still.
A lot of key guys are gone. It's not looking too good on that line. Like I said, that's why I just expected more. But
Jim Irsay said 2 Super Bowls this decade, and that doesn't look like that's going to happen. Pat McAfee's very frustrated with this team. He's shown that.
He said 2 Super Bowls.
Jim Irsay said back in like 2020 that they were going to win 2 Super Bowls this decade.
You're already halfway through the decade, and you haven't even gone close.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so
I mean, shoot, man. I mean, how many playoff games did the Colts go to in the last 5 years?
It doesn't matter how many you go to. How many have you won? Or how many times have they made the playoffs?
Well, that's my point. How many times have you gone to the playoffs? Because at that point, you can say the Steelers have made it closer to the Super Bowl than they have. And that's bad. That's really bad.
That's true.
And the Steelers haven't said that they're going to win 2 in the next 20 years or whatever they said, 10 years.
The only time the Colts made the playoffs this decade was in 2020. And they lost to the Bills.
So they would have been the 6th seed probably, right?
It doesn't show me.
Dang.
They were a wild card team.
Yeah, because I think the Steelers were 7. Wait, 2020? Oh no, they won the division that year. Never mind. Not the Colts. I'm not talking about the Colts. Or maybe I am talking about the Colts. The Colts won the division that year? I was thinking of 2021. Because the Steelers were the 7th seed going in against Kansas City that year. They probably would have put Buffalo at 3.
It's a mess. It's a mess in Indy. It's a mess in Cincinnati. We're struggling over here.
It's late. Yeah, I thought you were struggling mentally. I'm struggling trying to figure out these days. I'm just trying to figure out who's the 1 seed in 2020. Because it wasn't Kansas City. I don't think it was Kansas City. Was it Buffalo?
They wouldn't have been playing the Colts because the Colts were a wild card team. Why don't I just Google 2019 season playoff picture?
No, because 2020 playoffs. It's not 2020 season. Oh, 2019?
Yeah.
Steelers didn't make it that year. I thought it was I thought it was the 2020 like season in the 2021 playoffs. Which shoot, that still might have been. That would have been the weird Steeler year.
Maybe it's I don't know. They played a game on like January 7th of 2020 and lost to the Bills. Okay? That's what we know about the Colts. We're over.
2020 NFL playoffs. Colts, Bills. Colts fell to the Buffalo Bills in the AFC wildcard matchup at Bills Stadium, 27-24. The Colts offense registered 472 total net yards, which is the 5th most in a single game. It was 2021. Okay. All right. Let's look at the 2020 NFL
Who was
playoff.
their quarterback? Was that Phillip Rivers?
What in? It would have been. Does not. Yeah, it would have been Phillip Rivers. Phillip Rivers had 27, 46, 309 yards and 2 touchdowns. Which is actually pretty good, despite the loss. 2020 NFL playoffs. There we go. Here we go. Let's pull this up. Let's see if I was right. Was Buffalo the 3 seed? Would Buffalo have been the 3 seed? They were the 2 seed. Wait, what? Oh, shoot. You know what? That makes sense. Because the Steelers had Cleveland at home because they went undefeated. Like I said, I was thinking of the year after, which would have been the year that the Steelers snuck in during Big Ben's retirement tour and played the Chiefs and got dogged on by the Chiefs. So that's that. I'm sorry, guys, for the mistake. It's really hard when it comes to years. I kind of wish that instead of calling it, I wish the NFL wouldn't call it the 2015 season or the 2025 season. I wish they would call it the 2025-2026 season, like every other sport team pretty much does except baseball. Because, baseball plays from like April to October. Because they technically play for part of the year and then another part of another year. And it bothers me because it screws with my head and I can't figure out dates like this. Because when you say the 2020 playoffs, are you saying the 2020 playoffs from the 2019 season, or are you saying the 2020 season playoffs that were played in 2021? It's fair adjustment. Plus, sometimes you play 1 or 2 games in January that are regular season games. Some people play on New Year's Day, and then they play the following week. And then they play a wild card game. So technically, you've played 3 games in the next year. So why is it not the 2025-2026 season?
I don't know.
All right, go into your spiel. I know you're tired of hearing me talk.
I think we all are. Thank you for listening to today's show. If you enjoyed, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. We can be found anywhere you listen to podcasts and on YouTube at No Buts Show. Make sure to subscribe because I am up to some stuff. I've been working on some stuff during the break here. Our social media pages are NoButts_show on Instagram. My Twitter is Josh_Butts_2001, where you can see me crash out about the Bengals more. And if you would like to reach us, you can email us at bullnewspodcast2. That's the number 2 at gmail.com. Once again, if you enjoyed today's show, like, comment, and subscribe. Until next time, go do something nice for someone.